What's up, you guys? Hope you guys are doing well today. Today I'm gonna be doing grade 10 functions. So we're just gonna be dealing with the parabola and the straight line graphs, right? So the diagram shows the graphs of g of x equals to negative x squared plus 4, and the straight line equation, which is f of x equals mx plus c. So we know that if we're dealing with a parabola, it's always in the form of x squared, right? And this squared is just telling us that why is it squared is because when you have a parabola graph, right, it's basically telling you that you're going to have two possible values. In this case, the two possible values are a and b, because if we had to solve for x, we would actually find out that you actually have two possible values, and hence they say that a parabola has exponent 2, and that's how we identify that it's a parabola. And then if it was a straight line, we know that the straight line, we've been doing it since grade 9. We know that it's basically a straight line. It's in a linear form and the gradient is constant. Hence, we just know that it's just mx plus c. So this yellow line here represents my straight line, right? So don't be confused, guys. If you feel like you're just confused about it, just look at the shape of it and then it will tell you. Another way they could have written on a parabola was to show it also smiling like this. That's still a parabola, as long as it's still going to have the values cutting the x-intercept and the y-intercept, and it's still going to exist as a parabola with two possible x values, right? Okay, so in this case, we're dealing with a parabola where our a is basically less than 0. And we know that if our a is less than 0, our graph is sad. And we can see by the shape of this graph that our graph is actually really sad. And if we're dealing with a positive graph, would have it smiling, and our a wouldn't have been negative. Like here it's g of x equals to negative x squared, and they were like negative x squared because they knew that the graph was sad. The graph was just sad. And another thing I like about functions is that it always guides you, especially when you're answering questions. It always guides you. Like, if imagine if they asked you to solve for a and you got your a to be positive, then you would know that you're wrong, because the shape of the graph should tell you how your answer should look like, right? Yeah. Then from there, just take it. Yeah. So let's do 5.1. Write down the coordinates of c. So the coordinates of c, we ask ourselves what's happening at c. So c is cutting the y-axis. So because it cuts the y-axis, that means we have a y-intercept. And it's also a point of intersection, so we can also conclude that the graphs of g of x is also equal to the graph of f of x, right? These two graphs they're equal at point C. They're actually equal. So we know that if it cuts the y-intercept, we just let x equals to 0, and we're just gonna work with the graph that has more information. In this case, is the graph of g of x, right? So I'm just gonna write it down for you guys. Let me just move to this page. Let me write it down for you. So f of x is equals to negative x squared plus 4. Let y-intercept oh why am I keep on saying, yeah, y-intercept, let x equals 0. Therefore y is equal to negative 0 squared, but we already know that any number multiplied by 0 is just 0, so it's just going to be equal to 4. And then we can just conclude that the coordinates of c are actually when x is 0, y is 4 in the y-axis. Okay, and then let's do 5.2. 5.2, I think, wants us to determine the values, if I'm not mistaken. 5.2 says now, yeah, 5.2 says determine the coordinates of A and B. So we ask ourselves, what is happening at A and B? So A and B, the graph is doing what? It's cutting the x-axis, ne? And we also know that at A there's a point of intersection, ne? And at B it's cutting the x-axis. It's cutting the x-axis. So we know that if it's cutting the x-axis, in the x-axis y is 0. So but we're still gonna work with the graph where we have more information. In this case it's the graph of G. So we're gonna say G of x. In the graph of G of x, we're just gonna say for the x-intercept, let y equals 0, right? Okay, let me do it now. So we're gonna say that, okay, because now we're working in the x-intercept, so in the x-intercept, let y equals 0. Therefore we're going to have 0 is equals to negative x squared plus 4, right? Okay, plus 4 minus, yeah, plus 4. And then what we're gonna do, so other people would have transposed the negative x squared or the 4. I would transpose the x squared here. It's really just fine, guys. There's no problem how you do it. And the two possible ways you could approach this answer, but don't forget to put a plus or minus because it's a radical. I mean, it's a square root, negative 2, or x is equals to positive 2, right? And another way you could have done it was to say x squared minus 4 is equals to 0. This method still works also. And then you would actually end up with a difference of 2 squares, because you can see that x squared can be represented as x times x, and then the minus also. Then you find the square root of 4, which is 2, but then you're going to put opposite signs in the brackets, right? Therefore you're going to conclude that x minus 2 is equals to 0, or x plus 2, or x plus 2 is equals to 0, but x is equals to negative 2, or x is equals to 2. But we can't end our answers like this. We have to take its respective coordinates. We know that if the x values in the graph are moving to the left, they are negative, but if they are moving to the right, they are positive. And we know that because it's moving, and we know that there are two possible values for this graph, so we know that a is going to be negative 2 and 0, but b would be positive 2 and 0 and 0, like that. Then these are the coordinates of a and b, respectively. Yeah, respectively, these are the respective coordinates. So if you said b was negative 2, you'd be marked wrong, because at b the x values are positive and they're not negative, so you must be careful of that, right, guys? So please do be careful of that. When you get your possible answers, either of them might take the positive sign or the negative sign depending on where the value is located. That's what I'm saying. Always ask yourself, what is happening at a and b? Okay, I'm just gonna pause this for now, and then I'm gonna do the second part.